After years of diplomatic silence and escalating missile tests, a surprising new development has emerged on the Korean peninsula. South Korea's main intelligence agency now believes that North Korea and the United States may once again sit down for talks, possibly as early as next year. For months, North Korean leader Jong Un appeared to show little interest in engaging with Washington. But new intelligence suggests a change in tone, and it could set the stage for a renewed chapter in one of the world's most complex and volatile relationships. According to South Korea's National Intelligence Service, Jong Un appears to be reconsidering his diplomatic strategy toward Washington. The agency, which closely monitors developments within the North, assessed that Kim may be preparing to reopen dialogue with the US if the conditions become favorable. This marks a potential turning point after nearly 6 years of deadlock since the last Trump-Kim summit in 2019. Lawmakers briefed by the NIS said Pyongyang has begun preparing behind the scenes for renewed talks, possibly looking to ease international pressure while leveraging its growing ties with Russia and China. Intelligence analysts believe that any talks would likely occur after the annual joint US-South Korea military exercises scheduled for March 2026. Historically, Pyongyang has viewed these drills as provocative and symbolic of invasion rehearsals. Washington and Seoul maintain that they are purely defensive in nature, aimed at readiness rather than aggression. Still, every year these exercises heighten regional tensions and prompt fiery responses from the north. The NIS believes Kim is waiting until after the drills conclude, hoping to avoid the optics of negotiating under perceived military threat. Former US President Donald Trump, who returned to office in January 2025, has repeatedly expressed his desire to revive his personal diplomacy with Jong Un. During his recent tour of Asia, Trump publicly mentioned that he had wanted to meet Kim but couldn't fit it into his tightly packed schedule, which focused primarily on trade and strategic discussions with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Trump hinted, however, that he is open to returning to the region soon, specifically mentioning an April visit to Beijing, and suggested that another meeting with Kim could be added to his agenda. Trump and Kim's relationship has been one of the most unconventional diplomatic exchanges in modern history. The two leaders met 3 times between 2018 and 2019 in Singapore, Hanoi, and briefly at the demilitarized zone. Those meetings produced dramatic imagery, but little concrete progress toward denuclearization. The 2019 Hanoi summit collapsed after both sides refused to compromise. Pyongyang demanded sweeping sanctions relief in exchange for partial nuclear disarmament, while Washington insisted on full denuclearization before lifting economic penalties. Since then, communication channels have largely gone silent, replaced by missile launches and military posturing. In the absence of diplomacy, North Korea has pressed forward with its weapons programs. The regime has conducted dozens of ballistic missile tests since 2020, including intercontinental variants capable of reaching the US mainland. International watchdogs estimate that North Korea may now possess between 30 and 60 nuclear warheads, though the exact number remains uncertain due to the country's secrecy. Meanwhile, Kim has strengthened his security and economic ties with Russia, a relationship that deepened significantly following Moscow's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Intelligence sources report that North Korea has provided artillery shells, ammunition, and possibly even personnel to aid Russian forces, a move that has further isolated Pyongyang from the West but provided it with political cover and material support. Despite these alliances, Pyongyang continues to assert that it will not negotiate under the old framework of denuclearization first. North Korean state media has repeatedly dismissed the idea of relinquishing its nuclear weapons, describing the goal of complete denuclearization as unrealistic. Instead, Kim has demanded that Washington recognize North Korea as a nuclear-armed state, a position that the US continues to reject outright. This fundamental disagreement lies at the heart of the diplomatic deadlock and will likely shape the tone and structure of any potential 2026 summit. In contrast to the previous conservative administration, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung has adopted a more flexible approach toward North Korea. During his speech at the United Nations General Assembly in September 2025, Lee proposed what he called a phased solution to the nuclear issue, acknowledging that total disarmament may take years, if not decades. His government favors step-by-step confidence-building measures, such as humanitarian aid or partial sanctions relief, in exchange for verifiable limits on the North's weapons programs. Yet, so far, Pyongyang has been unresponsive to these overtures, continuing to criticize Seoul's military cooperation with the US. The possibility of a Trump-Kim summit comes at a critical moment for the broader Indo-Pacific region. Washington is recalibrating its alliances amid a shifting balance of power. China's assertiveness in the South China Sea, Russia's partnership with North Korea, and the ongoing nuclear modernization in Pyongyang all pose challenges to US strategic influence in East Asia. A new round of talks could either diffuse tensions or, if mishandled, legitimize North Korea's nuclear status and weaken Washington's leverage. For South Korea and Japan, the stakes are high. Both nations rely on US security guarantees, but remain within striking distance of North Korea's missile arsenal. For Trump, the prospect of meeting Kim again serves multiple political purposes. Domestically, it allows him to portray himself as a deal-maker capable of achieving breakthroughs where others have failed. Internationally, it presents an opportunity to shift attention from other global crises, such as ongoing instability in the Middle East or economic competition with China. However, analysts caution that without a clear framework or pre-negotiated concessions, another Trump-Kim summit could risk repeating the same cycle of showmanship without substance. The 2019 breakdown remains a cautionary tale of how high-level optics can overshadow deep-seated policy differences. According to the NIS, North Korea is calibrating its rhetoric in preparation for potential contact, toning down its usual fiery criticism of the US while maintaining strategic ambiguity. This pattern often precedes diplomatic engagement. The regime creates an appearance of unpredictability, then shifts to negotiation when it sees an opening. If talks resume, they could focus not only on nuclear issues, but also on humanitarian exchanges, economic sanctions, and possibly a limited arms freeze. As Trump prepares to revisit Asia in the coming months, with a confirmed trip to China in April 2026, speculation will likely intensify over whether a meeting with Kim Jong Un could be arranged. While official confirmation remains absent, diplomatic observers in Seoul and Washington believe the groundwork is already being laid quietly through back-channel communication. Nearly 6 years after the collapse of the last US-North Korea summit, the possibility of renewed talks represents both risk and opportunity. If handled strategically, such diplomacy could reopen dialogue on arms control and ease regional tensions. But without a realistic roadmap, it could instead embolden North Korea's nuclear ambitions and further entrench its ties with rival powers. For now, the world watches, waiting to see whether the familiar handshake between Trump and Kim might once again make headlines, and whether this time it could lead to something more lasting than symbolism.